retrospect, Baby Pokémon were a weird addition to the series. Breeding was introduced in Generation 2, leaving two compatible Pokémon in a daycare. Why didn't he use like Pound or Sanctuary? Something more appropriate. Those two Pokémon would produce an egg, being the same species as the mother. And to encourage players to try this out, Gold and Silver added a group of Pokémon exclusively obtainable by breeding their evolutions. And like, I get it, it's a different way to collect Pokémon, but ideally you would want the new Pokémon you find to be stronger or cooler than normal. Also, since Pokémon lines are limited to 3, this kneecapped a lot of Mons from getting more useful evolutions. R.I.P. Gorochu. Don't get me wrong, I like baby Pokémon, but something about them feels off. They're different from others. Different in ways I think we're supposed to pick up on. But how? Well, what if I told you that this group of Pokémon isn't actually real? What, think I'm crazy? Think I've had too many Amoonguss? Well, you're right, but that's besides the point. Hi, my name is Foolhardy. Around here, we find answers that don't exist. Today's topic: the truth about baby Pokémon. So before we start, yes, okay, baby Pokémon are real. You can hold them, play with them, battle with them. Some titles are just more compelling than others. What I really mean is that baby Pokémon are not a natural part of this world's ecosystem, but something more artificial. Not like Mewtwo artificial, but like your pet artificial. Let me introduce you to the world of selective breeding. I assume most of you are somewhat familiar with natural selection, the process where animals develop physical features and abilities over many generations until they are considered a different species entirely. All those big scary dinosaurs, they're now frail little birds. This big bulky guy, he's now a tasty rabbit. The buff, hairy primates who conquered the prehistoric world, there are now cold, skinny humans who make Pokemon videos. Where did we go wrong? Well, actually, I can answer that. The thing about natural selection is that it's pretty much random. Animals don't choose to develop or pass down these traits. They come about as genetic mutations. If the trait is helpful in a species' survival, they are more likely to pass it down to their offspring. This is opposed to artificial selection, or selective breeding, where we, as humanity, choose traits we want in animals and breed them together to make more animals with those traits, such as cows. Domestic cattle are descendants of the wild auroch. The two used to be similar, but due to global food demands, we have evolved them very differently. They've been bred to resist many diseases, produce a lot more milk, and have become thicker. Meat, they make more meat. That is the basics of selective breeding. And funny enough, Pokemon already incorporate some of this logic into their games. Tropius cannot learn Dragon Hammer through level up, but if you breed a Tropius with an Alolan Executor, that Tropius egg will know Dragon Hammer. So this mixing of genetic traits already exists in the Pokemon world, but I'm suggesting we take it a step further. Would it not be possible to choose physical traits of a Pokemon and breed them so much that just how we create new species in our world, eventually breeders would create brand new Pokemon entirely? However, since Pokemon are special creatures that naturally grow into stronger forms, these new Pokemon end up evolving back into the originals, artificially adding a new Pokemon to an established evolution line. Pretty big claim, I know. And if you know your Pokemon, you might already see some problems. The majority of selective breeding happens with domestic animals. And while baby Pokemon started as breeding exclusives, they've become more available in the wild. Also, we see in Legends Arceus that baby Pokemon have been around for longer than people even had Pokeballs. So I mean, yeah, people can breed a lot of animals into the world, but it's not like they can overtake a species in their natural environment, right? Right? So here's the thing. Wild cows don't really exist. Remember the Auroch I mentioned? They've been extinct since 1627. There are feral cattle, unbranded cows that live in nature, but those come from cattle that have escaped captivity or have been purposefully released into the wild, making them an invasive species. So not including other bovidae, in real life, the original cow has been completely replaced by one we brought into existence. It's a little scary when you think about it long enough, so let's not do that. This means it's very possible for baby Pokemon to be artificial, but also undomesticated. Let's say in the beginning, there were ancient Pikachus that gave birth to other Pikachus. Over many generations of breeding, humans created a subspecies of Pikachu that gave birth to Pichus. The original Pikachus would thin out and go extinct, allowing the whole world to be infested with the new Chus. This would absolutely happen. The output of captive Pokemon breeding is, high. And when I said ancient Pikachus, I really do mean ancient. You might think of this kind of domestication as something super industrial, something that's only existed for like 100 years. That is not the case. Selective breeding can be traced back to over 10 to 15,000 years ago. It's older than writing itself. People were specializing in dog sex before they could even conceptualize their own names. By comparison, Pokemon Legends Arceus is heavily inspired by Japan's Meiji Restoration period, from 1868 to 1912. If the timeline is similar to our own, that puts the game only around 150 years in the past, long after the beginning of breeding. And while Pokemon training didn't become a massive part of culture until the events of this game, this was far from the beginning of human and Pokemon relationships. The Diamond and Pearl clan have partner Pokemon, the ancient hero who fought Arceus wielded 10 Pokemon, there was a giant war with Pokemon 3,000 years ago. Again, very similar to our own world, and we don't have magic shrinking balls or Space Jam computers. All that being said, the lore doesn't conflict with any of the ideas of this theory. But that still doesn't mean it actually happened. So, why don't we start talking about these babies themselves? As of making this video, there are 19 baby Pokemon, all of which share traits that set them apart from your traditional pocket monster. They are all small, cutesy Pokemon who don't have the highest stats. This same description could be used to describe a lot of dog breeds. They're small to accommodate living spaces, they're cute so people will adopt them, and while certainly not all, most are relatively harmless to keep ourselves safe. There's a reason you can't just go into the woods and pop a cold one with the grizzlies. Next, half of all baby Pokemon evolve via high friendship with their trainers. They are quite literally born with the need to be as close and loving to people as possible. Again, a lot like dogs. They are given the title man's best friend. We made them that way. Do any of us feel real love? Then, baby Pokemon have one of the oddest game mechanics. They can't make eggs, they all have to evolve first. Now the obvious answer is, they're too young. Pretty much every species needs to reach a certain age before they can produce offspring. But this is not the case in Pokemon. If you were to hatch a Charmander, you could immediately put that sucker in the daycare and breed more Charmander. So it's something else that makes these Pokemon infertile. This can also be explained by selective breeding. There has been a study on Nordic dairy cattle that came to the conclusion that the decline in their fertility rates was tied to the fact that a genome selected for milk production also had a side effect of weakening embryo development. There hasn't been a lot of research on this specific topic, but I think it makes sense in the context of these Pokemon. If you're selecting traits to make a creature look younger, they can end up physically underdeveloped than other Pokemon, unable to breed until their evolution. If I haven't lost your attention, hi, thanks for sticking around. I hope you can see where my mind is going, but if you're still on the fence, there's one more baby Pokemon fact I haven't brought up yet. Gen 3 introduced a group of items known as the Incense. They have some effects in battle, but their main purpose is to breed baby Pokemon. As in, if you were to breed a Chansey on its own, that egg would hatch into another Chansey. But if your Chansey is holding a Luck Incense, then that egg will hatch into a Happiny. This is how Game Freak would introduce new pre-evolutions you couldn't get before. The only games that don't use Incense are Scarlet and Violet. However, considering the state those games were released in, I wouldn't be surprised if this mechanic was cut to save time. Regardless, this is proof these baby Pokemon aren't the natural forms these evolutions start out as. And it's not just the Pokemon associated with these items. Magmar has several dex entries that state it was born in an active volcano. Mag B doesn't have any dex entries like that. It just says they live and make their homes in volcanoes. Then in the episode Pikachu's Goodbye, we see a Pikachu small enough to be a Pichu. That episode has a whole colony of wild Pikachu, but not one Pichu in sight. Overwhelmingly, baby Pokemon have all the signs of being artificially bred. But how? And why would these things? Incense are usually made from organic material. You burn them like a candle to release pleasant scents and fragrances. The designs used in Pokemon are Japanese koro, vessels made to catch the ashes of the incense and sport a variety of beautiful designs. Game Freak being a Japanese company might give us a clue to the significance behind them. Japan uses incense burning from everything to rituals, to meditation, to just creating peaceful environments. It's a way to calm your mind and purify your spirit. This might be a stretch, but babies are often seen as symbols of purity and innocence, since they haven't lived long enough to be corrupted. I also think there's just a general correlation between romance and scent. Perfumes, colognes, flowers, foods, pheromones. We put a lot of emphasis on things that smell good because they make us happy. But all of that is just our mental state. Do smells actually change how babies are formed? Kind of. As crazy as it sounds, my research found that burning incense during pregnancy can reduce birth weight and head circumference. Using them regularly has the same effect as cigarette smoke, which is already proven to cause birth defects. In other words, the babies are born smaller. Which is essentially what this group of Pokemon boils down to. To be frank, I thought this was where I'd have to give up and say these are just fantasy creatures that act weird to smoke. But I guess where there's smoke, there's malformed children. This has been a long ride, but I'm not done yet. We can nail down the reason why each baby Pokemon exists. First of all, pets. Pokemon like Pikachu, Clefairy, Jigglypuff, and Meryl are already cute and desirable to people. So making smaller versions would be the easiest bag on the planet. And yes, I know Clef has Pokedex entries saying it comes from space, but unlike Magmar's, which were definitive statements, Clef's entries are more wishy-washy. Things like, it is believed to come from shooting stars, or they appear on nights with shooting stars. Correlation isn't causation. Togetic and Togekiss are said to bring good luck and joy, but they are very hard to find. Togepi eggs, on the other hand, are as common as candy. And while not a pet, bonsai trees have been popular for centuries, leading to the adoption of Sudowoodo and Bonsly. Also, Chingling and Chimecho are bells and wind chimes, so I guess people might want them. Second category, Pokemon bred for the workforce. Mantine are very popular to surf with because of how high they can jump. Unfortunately, housing large sea creatures is pretty expensive, let alone doing it ethically. Sure would be a lot easier if they were born as bite-sized little stingrays. Now, if you've ever owned a dog, you know they're a lot easier to train when they're young. Pokemon's medical field makes heavy use of Chansey and Blissey because of their heel pulse and nutritious eggs. Happiny trained itself to be a maternal figure to its favorite stone. They were probably bred like this to become better nurses. Training is also very important to Lucario. They specialize in the manipulation of aura and human emotions. Getting raised by people would allow them to understand emotions on a deeper level, making them even more powerful. After all, strong bonds are important to these creatures. Then there are the babies that can be trained to become entertainers. Mime Jr. is a mime, Toxels become rock musicians, and Badoo becomes Roserade, which are very dancer-esque. Now my last category is something I'd like to call bred to be less of a nuisance. Remember, selective breeding can create new species and can even overtake the old ones in extreme cases. Pokemon don't work like that, but it doesn't mean people wouldn't try. Some of these baby Pokemon are a lot less troublesome than their evolutions. Magmar burns anything it sees to a crisp. Electabuzz causes major blackouts by eating electricity. Jinx hypnotizes people by seductively dancing. Wobbuffet seems fine, but if you touch its tail, it tries to kill you with Destiny Bond. And don't even get me started on Snorlax. This fat skunk tank eats 900 pounds of food every single day. When they are done, they sleep in the most inconvenient spots imaginable, only ever awakened by one instrument. These things are awful. By comparison, their pre-evolutions, while being much cuter than these guys, don't express any of these behaviors, and are very tame even by other first-stage Pokemon. Now, as much as I tried, there is one baby Pokemon that breaks a lot of the rules and doesn't have a good reason to be artificially created like the others. Tyrogue. It's not very pet-like, it's not very problematic, and unlike the others, Tyrogue has a split evolution between the three Hitmons. Now, you can't just combine whole species by breeding. This means that only one of the Hitmons existed first. They were bred to make Tyrogue. Then the Tyrogue learned to evolve into the other two. This could be done for battling, but fighting types are pretty common, so I don't see why one of these things were chosen out of all things. Admittedly, it's more likely that Tyrogue just evolved naturally. And that's it. That's all she wrote. I think there's something we can take from all this. Most people agree that natural is superior, but that in no way means man-made creations have no place in the world. I'd take these guys over some of the boring wildlife any day of the week. Hope you learned something. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, don't be such a baby.